Hello there, my name's Phil, and I wanted to talk to you just for a minute about my book, because if you're watching this then you're either about to read or have read Being Billy, and thanks very much for taking the time to look at it. I wanted to tell you just a little bit about myself and the reasons why I wrote the book. Well, I'm 34 years old and I live here in South London, and I've worked in publishing for 10 years, firstly for Random House Group and also now as sales director for Simon & Schuster Children's Books. And I've done this, as I say, for 10 years. Before that I worked in a bookshop for 4 years, mostly selling children's books. But before that, and my first job out of university, was something that influenced me into writing Being Billy, which was working in children's homes. I worked in a home up in Yorkshire for a year, and it was an absolutely incredible experience for a number of reasons. One of the things that scared me most about these children's homes was the number of children that had been there for a long, long time, for 5 years, 7 years, sometimes even 10 years, without finding themselves a foster placement or an adoptive home. What also really affected me was seeing the number of children who would be given new homes through adoption. They thought they'd found a family that would look after them for the rest of their lives, but then they would find, because their behaviour was so challenging or so entrenched by living in care for so long, that actually the placements broke down, and for the second time in their lives they'd actually be abandoned by a family. And this left a real mark on me, and it's something that I've thought about a lot since. And this is where the idea for Billy came from. Billy's a 15-year-old boy, abandoned by his mother because she has alcohol problems. He lives in a home with his brother and his sister, who are twins, and whilst Mum still has contact with them, she chooses not to see him. We know at the start of the book that he's had a placement that is broken down in the past, but we don't know why or who with. And as the book develops, we start to realise just how angry and vulnerable Billy is as part of it. Billy's not based on a real kid, he's based on a number of kids really that I worked with. But these children were magnificent, they were amazing to work with. Despite the amount of trouble and upheaval that they'd gone through in their lives, they were incredibly affectionate kids, and really were just in need of a good home. They left a really big mark on me, and as I say, it's 14 years now nearly since I left that job, and I still think about them a great deal. So thanks very much for listening. I really do hope you enjoy the book, and do let us know if you have any more questions. Cheers. I was just going to read you the prologue, just so you can get a sense of how the book starts and the sort of life that Billy leads. The light in the hall gave the game away. 11 PM and it was still shining. If they were home, they'd be in bed and all the lights would be off. No, I knew this meant they were away. Even if they'd gone to the pub, they'd have been back. Work tomorrow and all that. I scuttled towards the front door, trying to stick to the shadows, turning the rock over in my hands. But as I reached the door, I decided to try the key. Don't know why. After all, it had been years since I left. Surely they'd have changed the locks. They weren't the sort to take risks. They'd made that only too clear. So when the key turned in the lock, I was pretty stunned. Not wanting to draw attention to the open door, I chucked the rock back onto the garden and stepped inside, closing the door quietly. Leaning against the wall, I shut my eyes and listened. Aside from the ticking clock and the humming of the fridge, perfect. It was beyond perfection. Slipping off my trainers, I picked my way along the hall, smiling as I clocked the timer switch on the lamp. I popped my head around the door of the kitchen and dining room. Nothing had changed. It was as if time had stopped 3 years ago and had only kicked in when I'd closed the door seconds ago. I reached the lounge, but paused when my hand reached the handle. Something stopped me from going in. Memories, I suppose. Too much had gone on in that room and none of it good. Instead, I turned to the stairs and crawled up them, keeping my head below the level of the window on the landing. You never know who was twitching their curtains, even late at night. I didn't pause at the top of the stairs. I knew where I wanted to go, why I was here. I padded past the photos of Jan and Grant that still hung on the wall, past the cheap, tasteless prints that they loved to the bedroom door. Without pausing, I pushed my way inside. And suddenly my senses were on fire. Even though everything about the room was different, it still felt the same. It still felt like mine. The posters had gone, of course. Only tiny traces of blue tack remained, pockmarking the walls at irregular intervals. Grant never did finish work properly. Everything was neutral. The bedding, curtains, even the carpet a deathly beige. It was as if the only way they could reclaim the room from me was to make everything completely nondescript. A blank canvas. Didn't matter. I knew where I was. When I closed my eyes, I could still see the City team photo stuck above my bed. Still hear the music pumping out from the windowsill. Still smell the overpowering whiff of Lynx deodorant. I allowed myself a smile as I fell onto the bed. And as my head sank into the pillow, I felt the first of the knots untie in my stomach. Slowly, 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 knot after knot after knot released. I could feel the tension lifting out of me, like it was fog rising. And with it came clarity. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I allowed sleep to come without fighting it. Because I knew where I was. I knew I was safe. I knew I was home.